Hey, what's up, guys? It's Brian and Derek and Alex, and this is Straight to Amp. I'm not sure, Alex, what episode is this? The 5th?
Number 5.
Episode number 5 and 6 and maybe 7, depending on how we want to break this up. We've got a super awesome interview that we were able to pull together with Trevor from Jet Set Satellite. Derek, the super huge homie for setting this up.
Oh, yeah. You know, like I've always been a big fan of these guys. They're my favorite local band to come out of Winnipeg, and a great group of guys in the band, not just Trevor, but Rich, Mike, Jay, Dave. They're all great musicians, great singer. And there's a show coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, do you actually have the date on hand? Do you remember offhand?
I think it's August 11th, but let me just double check.
Okay, as he's double checking, one of the cool things that I guess you'll get to hear is in the interview is just how warm and welcoming the band is to its fans, which is something that always kind of astounded me, and I know one of Derek's favorite things. Those of you in Winnipeg will know, like they interacted with their fans in such a cool and unique way, and there were so many cool things like the couch party and River City Rocks and all sorts of amazing, awesome interactions that they had with their fans. All sorts of Molson parties. They were at Super Spike one year, and you know, they were always open, and that's one thing that we end up talking about with Trevor. Is just how open and Jet Set is. You know, we also kind of discuss about what's going on in the future for them, what it was like transferring from being a band under a label to being an independent band, and just some other interesting tidbits here and there about the history of the band. I know that's something that you're super interested in most of the time is like the history, how a band comes together sonically. So
yeah, like if you listen to all 3 albums, and you'll hear Trevor talk about a lot of the transitions between the 3 albums. They're unique in their own way, each 3 albums, and they grew as a band, and you'll hear them talk about that.
No, exactly. Yeah, so that's super awesome and super cool, and so we were so glad to be able to have Trevor on here. He was incredibly gracious too, which, man, we are so thankful that he took an hour out of his life while the Jets game was on, no less, to sit down and talk with us about Jet Set Satellite and his musical endeavors.
Mm-hmm. And like you just tapped on, like how good they were with their fans, and that's why I've been such a diehard fan, is how good they were to us. Like getting invited to private listening parties when End of an Era came out, the Halloween haunt shows. They just did so much within the community and in Winnipeg for their fans. So it's good to hear that this show is coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have the date there for their show?
So it is August 11th. It's out near Selkirk. They got Bright Righteous and Moontan, 2 great local artists opening up for them, and many more.
Exomerta, the Disraeli Dreamers, two awesome bands as well that you guys should definitely go ahead and check out. Is there any information on tickets on there?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, keep your eye open on tickets. You can check that out on Facebook. There's a huge post about it. The return of Jet Set Satellite. It's the Toba Rock Fest. Make sure that you can go on there, like the page, say that you're interested and going, and you'll get all sorts of updates on how to get involved in that. Hopefully the weather will be nice because it's August, so you know you think it should be in theory, and so. Hopefully the weather's nice. Hopefully, even if it's not, you get out there and support these guys and show them just how loved they are.
Yeah. Let's get back out there, support local music, start getting people back to shows. And, of course, if you're not a Jet Set fan or don't know too much about them, definitely get out there, check out all 3 albums, Blueprint, Vegas, End of an Era. Both albums are great front to back.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely go ahead and check those out. And now here is our interview with Trevor from Jet Set Satellite. All right, so you ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Welcome back to Straight to Amp, guys. We are joined by Trevor from Jet Set Satellite, a band that I think all 3 of us have grown up with over the years and have enjoyed at different points in time in our life. Trevor, man, thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
Yeah, it's good to have the ferocity vocals behind the engine of Jet Set Satellite.
Oh man, one of the coolest sounding bands I think I've ever heard in terms of vocal wise. So it's really cool, man.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Oh, geez, thank you very much.
Actually, I don't know if Trevor will remember this, but we actually they opened up for a band. I will leave that band nameless because I don't want to shoot them in the foot.
Yeah.
But at this point in their career, they've already changed. The singer has went off and did his own thing.
Right.
And it was at what did they call the volleyball thing? Super Spike.
Yeah, it was Super Spike.
and he sounded just rough. And I remember talking to Trevor, and Trevor was just like, well, that's the difference between the guy who takes care of his voice and the guy who smokes and drinks before he goes on stage.
Lamb of God's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's tough, you know, I mean, to be you know, straightforward, it's like, if I knew what it took to be a rock vocalist before I got into it, and the amount of discipline and warming up and care for your voice and all that kind of stuff, it never really occurred to me that your body isn't your instrument until I was kind of deep into it. I mean, I probably would have just like practiced guitar a lot more.
oh, yeah.
So I guess that's something that interests me then. You said, you know, out of that quote, that's a difference in between a guy who takes care of his voice and a guy who smokes and drinks. What exactly do you put into taking care of your voice and body to produce the sound?
Well, I mean, I'm no angel, but, you know, you put 10,000 hours or so, you know, the token 10,000 hours behind anything. And I think you kind of fumble your way through, you know, whatever it is you're pursuing. And, you know, I don't really have any formal vocal training. A little bit once I had already we'd already had a record deal, and I just went to go kind of find out how I could maintain what I was doing, and was very leery about the instructor changing anything that I had done, because obviously I didn't want my voice to change. But you know, it's just, I mean, just trying to find out as much information about it as you can, and just, you know, turning over every leaf, I guess. I mean, anytime you're kind of using a raspy voice, you're incurring wear and tear on your vocal cords. So it's more or less about maintenance and the things that you can do to, you know, avoid increasing that wear and tear, or, you know, just that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Before we get into the history of the band, now we're talking vocals here. When did you first realize that you had this sound, this vocal sound?
I started playing in a band, probably in the mid 90s, I guess. And, I was, one of my main songwriting partners in the band was, a solo artist who's still performing in Winnipeg named Scott Hinkson. He's a really good friend of mine. And he was way ahead in terms of just anything I'd heard from a singer in Winnipeg, anyways, on the local scene. I'd never heard anybody that could actually really sing. I mean, I'd kind of, you know, like jammed around with different bands and stuff through junior high and high school, and had gotten behind the mic a little bit, but he was just like so far beyond anything that I'd heard personally. And so I kind of, in my own way, you know, I think, you know, you kind of emulate first. So I kind of just was trying to do what he was doing. And then out of that and my own limitations, just kind of started to develop my own style. But, you know, when I listen back to it now, you know, it was so thin and, you know, not really a shadow of what I think I can do now. And that actually started to come about mostly when I teamed up with Dave Swizicki, my partner in Jet Set Satellite. And he just, you know, musically brought elements that I had never, you know, growing up, I played in bands with 2 guitars, bass, drums. That was basically it. And with Dave, I mean, he brings, you know, keyboards and string arrangements and, you know, all kinds of percussion and just like, you know, so many colors that I hadn't really had to sing against. And suddenly, you know, just straight ahead rock vocals didn't cut the mustard, right? I mean, you know, he was bringing me music for some of the stuff off the first album, like Afterglow and Blueprint. And it was like, okay, like I got to sing this stuff, like really learn how to sing. And it just pushed me in a new direction. And it was shaky at first, but, you know, over time you keep doing it and the muscles get stronger and, you know, you kind of find your way. Like you said, you fumble your way through it. And through that, you know, develop your own sound. And so now I think, you know, after years and years and years of doing this, I think, you know, my bandmates have given me the greatest compliment where it's like, no matter what song we're doing, even if it's a cover, it sounds like me doing the cover, not like, you know, I'm not trying to sound like the singer of that particular song. It's just, you know, I'm bringing whatever it is that has become my sound, I guess, which is something that I have always tried to chase, I guess.
Right.
There's nothing like your bandmates pushing your limits, eh?
For sure. I mean, you know, I've always, I mean, I think I've always been the guy's biggest cheerleaders. And, you know, particularly with the last album that we did, End of an Era, I was just like, guys, you know, this, you know, candidly, I mean, we knew that it was probably going to be our last full length recording. And I just said, like, let's just create as many of those amazing rock and roll moments as we can in the songs, and try and push ourselves and raise the bar. And like, you know, if there's a spot for a drum fill, like take it. If there's a spot that, you know, you see an opportunity to take a guitar solo up a notch, I mean, just, you know, just fucking nail it to the wall. Like, I just wanted everybody to just squeeze whatever, you know, talents and limitations we had to just try and put something on tape that was more than anything we'd ever put out before.
And I would definitely agree that End of an Era is kind of your most wide open album. It definitely has such a variety of songs that probably, you know, still absolutely the Jet Set sound, but not necessarily something you would have heard on any of your past albums. And I think that's a really good exploration of your guys' sound. And so hearing that that's the kind of the way that you went about it, it makes so much sense now in retrospect.
Yeah, the sound was always developing. I mean, it's kind of odd for me because I'm envious of bands that come out and their debut albums just killer. You know, they have their sound all together, and they just like come out with a diamond in the rough right away. For us, I mean, I kind of feel like we developed in plain view in a way, because just the nature of starting as two guys, and, you know, we recorded the first album with essentially hired guns, studio musicians, out of necessity. We just didn't really have the connections to players locally that we, you know, that seemed like natural go-tos to fill out the band. And as we, you know, eventually did get the members that became the full lineup of Jet Set Satellite, that's when the sound kind of took another, you know, sort of huge leap. And we were in the midst of it with Vegas. I feel like it kind of came to the closest to what I had originally sort of imagined as the sound of Jet Set Satellite by End of an Era. But, you know, I mean, I think that there's shades of it through all three albums. I just think like maybe the arrangements were probably the most sophisticated on End of an Era in terms of songs like The Beast and Resurrexit. And like that to me is kind of more like the core sound I had always sort of imagined for the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like the first time hearing The Beast live, I was like, it's like that moment where you're taken back in your seat. Like, wow, did he really just do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like you guys have always had, even though it has evolved over time, you guys have always had a really cool sound, in my opinion. I'm probably going to make you feel a little bit old here, but the first time I heard you, I would have been 11 years old. You guys had some songs on NHL 2002.
Yeah.
And I heard some of that stuff, and I'm like, whoa, who are these guys? And I had a family member working in radio at the time, kind of weird that I am now, but I had a family member working in radio, and I'm like, no, get me this album, please. And I listened to Blueprint like so much, and it was one of my favorite albums from, you know, about that time until I was probably about 15 or 16. I listened to it so much I ended up having to buy a second copy because my first copy skipped so much.
Mine got stolen. I couldn't find it anymore.
Oh no. Yeah. But yeah, so like, I don't know, you say that you're envious about bands who come out and have the sound right out the gate, but you guys had an incredible sound right out of the gate. And while I'm glad that you've been able to evolve your sound to a point that you feel was what you envisioned in your mind's eye when you started it, don't discount what you did with your earlier work. It's incredible.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, you know, I guess it's just, you know, it feels a little bit schizophrenic to me just because of the heavy side and the light side, which are very much part of our identity as a band. I think it takes I think there's a special audience for it because, you know, I don't know if it's like the most natural through line when you listen to one of our albums, because we do have those departures where it's like, you know, alongside like a Vegas or a Remover, you've got Please Capture Me or Belonging, which I think is something of a challenging leap for some listeners. But at the same time, we like it and we make music that we like, and that, you know, is kind of, I mean, we, you know, have nods to our diverse set of influences and inspirations too. And it was just nothing that we seemed to be able to avoid. Like, you know, we ultimately, when we were assembling albums, it was always about, okay, what are the best songs that we have here? And ultimately for me, having grown up on radio as well. I mean, I listened to tons of radio when I was growing up. It comes down to hooks and, being able to capture the listener and take them somewhere memorable that they want to return to, leaving them wanting more. And I think like over the scope of the 3 albums, it always really pissed me off that like a lot of bands tend to mellow out like as their careers go on, and they don't ever return back to the nuts and bolts of like what it is that made them popular in the first place. Like sometimes it almost feels like they themselves don't understand their appeal, and will often take like a producer or something to come out, like, for instance, Metallica, where they really got sidetracked a little bit through the 90s. And, it took a producer like Rick Rubin to go, this is why everyone loved you guys originally, and this is what you need to get back to. Yeah. And, now you kind of see, some of that with their last couple of albums. But
exactly. It was like go back to your roots. This is what everybody wants.
Yeah, I mean, and to some degree, like, I don't know why you would even necessarily stray from it. Like, I understand the exploration artistically and everything, but, like, if we didn't have songs like The Beast and Resurrexit and, some of those tracks on End of an Era, I would feel like we were phoning it in or something. Like, of course you expect some heavy material to come with the band. I mean, it's just like, I hate it when bands just kind of like, just smooth everything out and get away from what it is that makes them popular.
Totally agree. I am wildly curious about something, though. If you guys were to come out with a new album and new music in the future, with the way that Spotify culture exists now, how would you go about like doing that? Would you go about writing your songs and your albums any differently, knowing that like most of the time people don't listen through full albums anymore? It's the same sort of thing as trying to catch people radio wise, but it's a much more sporadic listening pattern.
Yeah, it's a good point. I can't imagine us doing it any differently. For me, it was a real experience going from being on a label to being independent. And, with that, I mean, the one thing that the labels are really good at is obviously the promotional cycle and getting the songs in, at that time, in people's ears and on TV and promoting everything. And when we went independent, we had to face the realities that like, okay, we're going to get about like 1% of the promotion that we received when we were on a label, because we were self-funded. But at the end of the day, you're the one who is putting out the music, and you're the one who's going to have to live with it, and you're going to have to answer to it, and you're going to have to stand on stage and perform it in front of people and represent it, the way it's written and the way that people, like it or don't like it. But, it's yours. It's just, for me, it was about creating something that had the potential to be lasting, and to me that's still the album format, and with it songs that you believe in. Oh, yeah. And however people choose to listen to it, there's still going to be a faction of people that do listen to albums front to back and that appreciate the format. And I know I mean, I know that our songs have been discovered through different channels where you're not getting the full album experience, and that's fine. But for the listener who does want to go a little deeper, for the audiophile, who's still buying albums and still interested in that kind of journey, I feel like that we would still kind of serve them as our primary fan base. Yeah.
And as creative artists too, you're not going to limit yourself to 1 or 2 songs. Like if you guys have it in you, which I know all these individual members in this band, and they're all amazing, not just singer, but musicians as well, that they have a lot to create. So I could see Jet Set in the future, like, hey, if they got something to make, they're going to make a full thing, not just a 2-part thing.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I totally agree, and that's the way that I think people should go about it. I was just kind of curious to know your opinion.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, though, too, and I mean, I throw this to you guys, I mean, there's been some bands that I follow that, they put out 2 or 3 songs at a time rather than an album, and some of them have even gone to the point of putting out, say, like, 3 EPs of 4 songs each or something like that, and they kind of bring them out as almost chapters and then sell the album at the end. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the care factor is decidedly lower for that kind of stuff than that approach.
I actually talked to
somebody
somebody
putting an
about
album
this.
out. Even though the album format, like you said, has largely been kind of, people have moved on from that. Something about it just doesn't have the magnitude. It doesn't have the impact.
Yeah, no, and I actually just talked to somebody about this very recently. There's my main show is actually about like modern emo music, and there's this great math emo band out of Montreal by the name of Gulfer, and most of their releases up until this point have been splits, right? So they, they'll record 2 songs, and it'll be their 2 songs on one side of a vinyl, and another band's 2 songs on the other side. And I talked to them about it, and they said, they wish they had done it differently because it feels very disjointed. And while it's great that you're constantly getting ears on your product because you are putting something out every 6, 8, how many ever months, very short individual bursts of time, he said that like it just kind of felt disjointed and that they wish they had put out a full album. And they did recently just put out a full album, and like they ended up getting like a 7.8 on Pitchfork, and they're getting huge media attention now, which is great. So I agree with you that like the album is still the lasting format. I just wish more people would kind of agree with that. Another thing I did want to ask you is because you feel that like media consumption through an album format is very important. How do you feel about release on vinyl?
Well, I mean, I like it. To me, it's the sort of the equal and opposite reaction to no tactile media at all. Right. I mean, it's, what comes up, but the largest piece of media that we've actually ever, had to digest music. So I think in some ways it's natural. I mean, especially with the albums that originally came out on vinyl, the sort of 2 sides, right? The 2 programs of 20 minutes each or so. Right. I think it gets a little bit much to deal with when you have like, some bands that, as the CD format came out, they exploited the length of it. And so you've got some, classic albums like Soundgarden, Super Unknown, which are, they crack the 70-minute mark and it's spread over, 4 or 5 LPs. It just doesn't have the same experience to me. But I think particularly if you write for the format and write, a 40-minute album that goes side 1, side 2, I think it's an interesting dynamic to that journey, right? Because again, I mean, growing up, I'm old enough to have listened to cassettes, and there was a definite sort of way that you sequenced an album with, what was going to be on side 1, track 1, and how you ended side 1, with the track, and then you flipped it over, and side 2, track 1 was kind of the beginning of something too, right? When CDs came out, you kind of sequenced the album differently. The hills and valleys in terms of the listening experience were a little bit different, because it was one full listen right through with no stops. But that flipping over of the tape and almost having 2 distinct programs was kind of a unique experience.
Man, that's fascinating. I had never really thought of it or had it put like that way before. So yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's go to the early days, the startup days of Jet Set Satellite. How did the band get started, and what was the local scene like in Winnipeg back then?
It wasn't too bad. I mean, I never really felt super connected. I played in a band called Far Gone with my friend Scott Hinkson and a couple other guys, and we played, not a lot, but we probably played like 10 or 15 shows a year, maybe. So we weren't super tapped into the scene. But there was like quite a number of local bands. I mean, the clubs, there was a lot of opportunities to play. The Royal Albert was still around. The Pyramid, the Zoo was still there. Aussies.
R.I.P. the Zoo.
Yeah. So, we had a pretty good experience overall. So that was kind of where I had my first main. There was also the Junkyard, which was across the street from the MTS Center, which was a regular haunt of ours too. But so it was a good scene. Didn't feel totally connected. Didn't feel like, I don't know. Just, I'm not really too sure. It felt super competitive, I think, with some of the bands, maybe not in a good way. And we put out a couple of albums, and then I met Dave Swizicki through a mutual friend, and I had sort of had a number of songs that I'd kind of built up, a bit of a back catalog that I didn't think were right for the band. And I was going to Red River College, taking the creative communications program there. And there was, and still is, I believe, a term project that was like runs the length of the course. It was a 2-year course, and you had to write a novel or a collection of short stories or a play or something. And I pitched them the idea that I would do a solo album, and they thought it was pretty ambitious. The instructors, I had to, pitch the instructors on this and stuff. And, but I had produced one song fully with Dave, and they gave me the go ahead and said, all right, feels like a lot of work, but if you think you can do it, go ahead. And I cheekily put in the sort of pitch documents that my end goal was to get a record deal. And I didn't really believe it, but I put that in there as sort of the best case scenario. And so we continued recording, and we just, it was so fun because having played in bands, like I said, that were 2 guitars, bass, drums, in a basement, bashing it out, Dave just brought all of these different instruments and different sounds and just a sort of naivety that just had us curious and kind of, I don't know, chasing whatever we wanted. It just felt like there was just no limits, and we were recording different ways. We were, we were recording vocals in all kinds of different rooms of the house, and experimenting with found sounds, and just squeezing every object we could get our hands on, basically, and just it was a really adventurous sort of time sonically. And we were listening to all kinds of stuff, but in particular, this Sarah McLachlan album had like this really great piano sound that Dave was sort of after. And he had some kind of contact. He had ordered a custom guitar from a music store in Montreal, and they sort of gave him a contact to a producer named Pierre Marchand, who had done a lot of Sarah McLachlan's albums. And Dave reached out to him and said, hey, we're trying to get this piano sound. It's not really working out. And, kind of just left him a voicemail. And months went by, and we'd forgotten all about it. And all of a sudden one day, Dave phoned me and said, you are not going to believe who I just got off the phone with. And he said that Pierre Marchand had called him back. And through the course of their conversation, I guess Pierre got curious and said, what are you guys up to exactly? And why don't you send me a couple of tracks? And so Dave sent him a couple of the songs that we were working on, and he wrote back and said, hey, this stuff sounds really cool. I've got a really good relationship with Sarah's record label, Network Records, out of Vancouver, and I think I'd like to forward this and with a letter of recommendation that they should sign you guys. And it was just like that. It was so like the lightning strike, that you don't see coming. It was a whirlwind after that. All that happened. Days later, we were being flown out to Vancouver, just Dave and I. And, they wanted us to play for them. They originally said, well, can you guys get a show together in Winnipeg and we'll come see you? And we're like, we don't have a band. Like, we've never played. We're recording in a bedroom. Like, we had a little bit of experience, but Dave had actually never been on stage before. Oh, wow. And so we were so green in some ways that, we were just flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, literally. So they flew us out there, and we played for the record label people. And I mean, they were a very successful management company more than a label. As a label, they had Skinny Puppy, and that was one of the main draws for us. And some other bands that were really interesting, and obviously representing a global superstar like Sarah McLachlan. So we knew that they had a lot of clout. But they were also managing the Bare Naked Ladies, and they managed Avril Lavigne, and like some really big, artists, right? And so we played, I think, 5 songs for them right in the lobby of the record label, and they pretty much signed us on the spot, and that's how it happened. It was really crazy.
That's incredible. I actually have a couple of questions about that. First, as you mentioned that the scene in Winnipeg was very competitive and not in a good way. I'm not asking you to name any bands, but like, what exactly did you mean by that?
I don't know if like the bands really helped each other out as much as they maybe could have. It just felt like every band that we played with anyways had kind of an attitude.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel very supportive. I think that's probably a lot different in Winnipeg now. I get the sense, even talking to people playing in bands there now, that there's just a much different climate. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
They're just, I think, when we got signed, there was a lot of bad feelings, a lot of just murmuring and bands that we hadn't paid our dues and, whatever that means. But, I'm sure there was many bands who had played a lot more shows than we had that had, stuck it out in the trenches for years before us. But, it was just, I don't know how you could have faulted us for how it happened. All we were was two guys writing songs and we accidentally got a record deal. How is that our fault?
Yeah.
Right.
If you're good, you're good, and somebody will find you. That's pretty much just the way of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that you were, trying to make sound sonically with like anything you could get your hands on. What's the weirdest thing that you ended up recording and using in a track?
Probably a vacuum hose.
No.
We were swinging it around. In Dave's parents' living room to get that kind of sound.
Oh my God.
And it was worked out really well. It never made it to the final album, but it did. I think it was on the track After the Rain from Blueprint, the original demo, that we used it. That song in particular, even though it's not it's almost like a component piece to Lies by the Thousands, the opening track. But I think it was the demo anyways that for us kind of blew the sonic exploration wide open. There was something about that track, and we were listening to this band from Seattle called Tuatara, which is kind of a super group, an instrumental super group. There's Peter Buck from REM is in it, and Barrett Martin from the Screaming Trees, and they were definitely influential on us with those tracks, and we were just in our way trying to kind of emulate some of the sounds that we heard on those songs.
Nice. Well, if you can't find a didgeridoo, grab a vacuum hose.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Totally.
I'm going to remember that one. So
yeah,
at this point now, you guys are on a label. You got signed. You got some singles out. How did I know Brian asked about it earlier, but how did you guys get approached for the NHL 2002 soundtrack?
Yeah.
Well, it's just one of those, again, another lucky strike, but EA Sports, who produced that video game, I think they're based out of Vancouver, and they already had a relationship with our record label and publicist, and I think that our publicist, I said publicist, I meant publishing company, and I think they just pitched some of our songs to the game, and they included it, and it's one of those great moments, because of course I'm a lifetime Jets fan, and for that, it's like two of your loves kind of intersecting. Mm-hmm. That's, to me, like, it doesn't get any better than that.
Did you get a free copy of the game?
I did, yes, and I played it religiously. And it was great that you could kind of go. I think there was like a legacy option with the Phoenix Coyotes, and you could play with Jets uniforms.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. Now, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who was on the cover that year?
Oh, boy. That's a really good question.
He's retired now. He's a legend. Won back-to-back Stanley Cups. Number 66.
I want to say Mario Lemieux.
That is correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's Lemieux.
All right.
That's actually my first discovery to Jet Set Satellite was not just the radio, but that game.
Yeah. No,
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable to me. It's like... it's like when those things happen, you just feel like, your music is kind of on tentacles out there, and you never know who it's going to reach. Mm-hmm. We've had some cool placements in TV shows and movies as well. And even recently, long after the band has been kind of inactive. And I love that idea that someone can find your song in a really unorthodox way.
It's going to sound crazy, but like I've done it all the time. 2002, I found you guys. Gob was on that on that soundtrack as well.
Treble Charger.
Treble Charger was on that soundtrack. And in 2004, I ended up finding the Ataris, Brand New, Alien Ant Farm. We're all on that one. And like even some of the newest ones, like Pup, just this amazing Canadian new punk rock band was on the 2015 one. EA has always done an incredible job with their soundtracks. And so even nowadays, like I'll just go and look up the soundtracks of the current games just to see what the heck they're bumping, because whoever is running their music department is doing a heck of a good job.
Oh, for sure. And it's a lot easier now that there's Shazam, right? You can figure out exactly who these songs are. Because, I mean, music supervision for television shows, because TV these days is pretty much like feature films almost. And the music supervisors are, they're using all kinds of, great independent bands and it's I Shazam stuff all the time and discover bands like that myself.
It's much easier to be an independent band now than what it would have been when you guys were putting out Vegas and End of an Era. There's loads more ways for you guys to get your music out there. I did mention Spotify before. Apple Music is another one. I am a big fan of Bandcamp. I think that's a really, really good way. People use SoundCloud and stuff like that. What is one struggle that a current independent band could be going through that most people wouldn't know?
Well, I mean, I think that the kind of old-timey channels like regular radio stations are pretty much off limits. It's still the major labels, I believe anyways, have like a stronghold on those sort of really traditional channels of promotion. So, I don't think there's any cracking that nut. But like you said, I mean, it's a lot easier. I mean, it's easier to produce and distribute your music, than ever before. It's just a matter of how do you attract an audience to it. And there's obviously multiple ways to skin that cat. So, but yeah, I mean, I do kind of wish that at the time that we released Vegas, which was in 2005, that things like Bandcamp existed, would have certainly made it a lot easier for us. And I think would have benefited us a great deal. But that's the way it goes.
Well, I'm going to share another quick pre-story from my Jet Set time. Is I was a big bar band fan. I love going to bars, just checking out who's doing local things, and I got on with a lot with going to see Old School a lot. This band called Old School. And they would do amazing rock covers. Like they just had an energy. The drummer was unreal. The lead guitarist were unreal. And I got to know the lead guitarist really well. And then I asked him when he's playing again. And he says, well, I'm actually putting that on the side. I'm actually going to go back to my real band. And we're putting out an album. I'm like, well, what's the real band called? He goes, Jet Set Satellite. I'm like, no way. Like, Baby Cool Your Jets, Lies by a Thousand. And he goes, oh, you've heard of us? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, we got a CD party coming up in a month. So I went that. And then ever since then, I've been like a full-on, this is my favorite Winnipeg band of all time.
Real good. Real good.
So with that being said, let's go into the story of how Vegas came about.
Well, I still say to this day, I think it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It was there were several member changes. We endured some personal losses in our families. It just seemed like the universe was against us at certain points. We battled some demons. It wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be independent. We thought, naively again, that the relationships that we'd forged with media types, I guess, while we were promoting Blueprint, would be there still. That radio stations that supported us would naturally, if we delivered, similar quality material, that they would just jump on it. Not the case. Mm-hmm. For those kind of channels, being on a label is everything. So there were a lot of doors that were closed on us that we didn't anticipate necessarily. And then, even when we got things rolling with Dwayne Barron, who we were incredibly fortunate, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but he mixed our album, and he produced a number of huge classic rock albums, including Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears, which is just a killer sounding album.
No
and
kidding.
he's an ex-Winnipeg.
No way.
He's from Winnipeg. Yeah, he's from Winnipeg. And so again, another lucky stroke. Someone that we knew, a friend of the band, was cousins with Dwayne Barron. And he said, well, I'll give you his information and see, maybe he'd be interested. And so we contacted him, and sure enough, he was. And a couple of months into us mixing the tracks, all of a sudden, all communications just ceased. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And Dwayne had been in a huge car accident. He had actually been T-boned while driving a convertible, and it absolutely flipped over, and he was in the hospital for a couple of months. And so this album that had already been years in the making for various reasons, was again sidelined. Like I said, it just seemed like there was a dark cloud over it or something like that. But and there was every reason to quit. I mean, there were so many reasons to quit, but we just kept going. And I was working at a record store in Winnipeg at that time called Planet of Sound, and I was a bit of a sitting duck for people coming in, because they'd be just like, when's the new album coming out? When's the new album coming out? When's the new album coming out? And everybody's asking me, and months turned into years, and I kind of started to run out of answers, and it was frustrating for me too. But thankfully, what was it, like, I guess 5 years after the first album, we were finally able to release our follow-up. And I think, alienated a lot of people. I think we lost a lot of our fan base in that gap. But there was nothing we could really do about it. Mm-hmm. The fact that it has the life that it has had, and that some of the songs have gone on to be in TV shows and films and things like that, and that we ultimately can listen back to it and are proud of it, proves to me that we did the right thing and took the right approach. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Yeah, where you were talking about losing a bit of the fan base, that's obviously where I became a bigger fan, and started coming to almost every show. And what I noticed is you saw repeat faces from there on. From that CD release party for Vegas, I remember seeing the same people at every show up until End of an Era came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, that was always the goal. I mean, we have a lot of respect for the people that like our music. We knew that it was going to be a special kind of fan, and I know everybody says that and everything. But I mean, I think we asked a lot of the people that followed us, and they never disappointed. Mm-hmm. And we always thought a lot of our fan base, and when we were doing anything, it was always, with that in mind. We would never want to come out and do it half-assed, or, it was just, there was just because we felt like our fan base had a lot of integrity, we tried to act accordingly. Yeah.
And one thing I'll top on too is, as a fan, I actually found you guys were probably one of the most loyal and true bands to your fans. A lot of specialty things they did, like they had a fan group, and then like they would nominate somebody monthly to be the Jet Setter of the month. You had private listening parties for End of an Era when it first came out, actually on top of Planet of Sound, that you hosted for a select group of fans. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of bands who don't do that kind of stuff. So I think you like I said, you guys were one of the most true bands to your fans, especially in Winnipeg.
What kind of drives you to do that, man?
What drives us to do that?
Yeah, like a lot of bands don't do that kind of thing, and it is unique and awesome, and it puts you more in contact with your fans, I guess, is one way to go about it. But yeah, I don't know, like what was the thought process that kind of went into being like, yeah, no, this is something we absolutely want to do?
Just being fans of music and bands ourselves, I guess it was just like, well, what would we want to, what would we want to do if we were a fan of the band? Like, what can we do? I mean, it does take an extra effort for sure, particularly when you're independent and you have to do everything, we have friends that helped us, of course, but I mean, we don't have, we didn't have a lot of corporate sponsorship. We don't have people working for us. It was, if this was going to be done, I mean, the lion's share of it was going to fall on our shoulders to do. But yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things that we did was we had a contest on our website to do, Jet Set in your house.
Yeah, the couch party.
Yeah, and the people who won, we're still in contact with them and friends to this day, because it was just such a great performance, and it had, it was such a great night, I mean, it had as much to do with them as it had to do with us, because they invited 80 people, and it was just a great situation, and it's one of those things that it's just a great memory now.
Yeah, and a lot of, as a fan too, and like knowing the group around the fan base, a lot of us, what we would do too to help promote this band is we would actually drag people to the shows with us. I would make my friends come with me to see this band. I think I made you come once, Alex. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But definitely, there's been a few people I have made come to these shows and actually therefore became good fans.
I mean, that's how I started coming to the shows too. I was there at some of them, and like I was a fan of the band, but I wasn't really much of like a show guy. And my buddy's like, no, you have to absolutely come to one of these shows. And I made it out, and I was like, this is insane. This is such a cool atmosphere.
And and I'll do Trevor's horn again here, is like this is a band that actually puts on an amazing show on stage.
Yep.
There was one show at Coyotes one time. There was you guys used to get a lot of Molson sponsored events, and I think this was a Molson sponsored event. You opened for a band. I won't say the name again because you guys got actually chanted to play one more song on stage.
Yeah.
And then when you guys were off stage, half the people left and went outside and drank on the patio.
Right.
Mostly everybody there was for Jet Set Satellite.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask what your best fan interaction ever was.
Oh, too many to say. I couldn't narrow down one. I mean, we always tried to make ourselves available. I answered. I used to put notes into even like when we ship merch out and stuff like that. And, I certainly tried to answer most, if not all, of the emails that we received. We always, were kind of hanging around the merch booth or whatever after the shows. It wasn't a mystery to us as to, why we were able to continue doing what we did for as long as we did. And if nobody was coming out to the shows and nobody was enthusiastic about what we were doing, then we would be living in a cone of silence. So we really appreciated, everybody that came out and all the, all the cash they put down to support our music and support, us living that dream.
Mm-hmm. As I was just mentioning, you guys played a lot of Molson Canadian sponsored events. Now, was that a relationship, or that just came about as is?
I don't even remember the genesis of it, to be honest with you. At some point, it just came to be, and I don't really know why. But they were a great help. I mean, they certainly add a lot of profile to what we did, and they were really nice to work with. I can't say enough good things about them. Yeah,
because I remember there was a show at the Charlie, there was the show at Coyotes, when you guys got brought in for Super Spike.
All these shows I couldn't attend because I was too young.
Yeah, I'm a little older than Brian. And then also there's a couple, one or two that were at Silverados too. That were
I think I snuck into one of those.
Yeah, and like got great opportunity that these guys got actually a handful of times got to open for Thornley too.
I love Thornley.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Big Wreck fan to this day. He's an incredible musician, Ian Thornley, and what a career he's had.
So you guys are kind of doing some more shows coming up. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, we're doing a show. We were contacted about getting back together. Not that we broke up, but we haven't seen each other for quite a while. I mean, I've kept in contact and even been writing with a couple of the guys in the band on and off, but we really haven't been on stage since 2008. It's been almost a decade by the time that we play this show. It's Saturday, August 11th. Mm-hmm. It's called Toba Rock Fest, presented by the Village Idiots. And there's a bunch of bands. We're headlining, but there's a bunch of bands. Bright Righteous, Moontan, Silence Kit, The Bloodshots, Northern Royals, Disraeli Dreamers, Exo Murda. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce their band, Soul Hounds. Yeah. So it's kind of a one-day festival in St. Andrews / Selkirk, I believe, on a big piece of property. And don't know exactly how many people are going to be there. I think they're aiming for 1,000 to 3,000.
I think they'll get more.
But it sounded like a good time, and they seemed pretty well organized. And so we said, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, me and Alex, we're good friends with the lead singer of Bright Righteous, so we're looking forward to these newer bands playing with you guys. It's
I've covered Exo Merita before. Those guys are killer.
Yeah.
And Disraeli Dreamers is such a Winnipeg name.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And but now with all these, you're headlining with all this young local talent underneath you. Do you almost kind of feel like the godfathers of Winnipeg rock now?
I hope so.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if I've really ruminated on it that long. But, you know, I'm impressed that people are still interested. You know, I at some point, I think in the band's trajectory, I realized that, you know, the decisions that we'd made, we weren't going to be Metallica, that we were going to mean hopefully quite a bit to a small group of people. And I was comfortable with that, and I'm really glad that people are still listening and that our music still means something to them. It reinforces, you know, our collective decision years ago to kind of just respect the music and each other, and you know, the synchronicity that we had, I think, and just to ultimately just put out albums that we believed in rather than, you know, what a record label might want us to do, or, you know, what we thought was the right thing to do. We really stayed true to our muse and put out songs that we thought were good. So
I've been noticing, and we all have lately, on Instagram and Facebook, there's been a lot of posts lately.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be honest, it was just a way of us to tease the upcoming show, to get people a little bit intrigued about what was going on. I was in Winnipeg over the holidays. I live in Toronto now. I was back home over the Christmas holidays, and Dave and I got together and we started jamming, and we kind of knew about this opportunity, and just started to, you know, shake the rust off and get our ducks in a row, because you know, this is, again, I mean, it's like any of our past dealings. This is no small event for us. You know, we had no idea, and we were very straightforward with the organizers. We have no idea what our draw is going to be in 2018. But if you're interested, we are too, and we'll bring everything we have, just like we always have, to getting back up to speed. Because I would never want to stand on that stage and be anything less. You know, we wouldn't do it if we didn't think that we were capable of still putting on that same quality and caliber of show. That would just be vanity. Like, it would be serving our egos, and that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this because we want to have fun, and we want to have, you know, a moment with the people that enjoyed our music, you know, back in the day. Right. And we just hope we can deliver.
Nice. Yeah, well, we're going to do the best that we can to help promote this show and you guys. And I know the Village Idiots are really good at promoting local music too.
I think my employers, UMFM, are helping you guys out too. I know I've heard some commercials for it, so hopefully we can get some more.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we got a few more things to rattle off with Trevor here. So
I'll ask you a quick question. What do you think is what's the future of Jet Set Satellite from here on out after the show coming up? Do you have any plans at this point? Are you kind of winging it? What do you think? What do you want to do?
You know, perfectly honest, I just don't know. As I said, I mean, I've been in contact and even have written some songs with Mike and Dave from the band over the past couple of years. There is material kicking around. I mean, there's been new songs written. It's not an album by any means, but there's definitely there's a skeleton there. There's core tracks. I in my mind, I mean, I think what the sound of Jet Set Satellite in 2018 would be. But, you know, having not been on stage together in 10 years, a really long time. We've all, you know, we're different people in some regard, and I just don't even know what to expect. I mean, with me in Toronto and them in Winnipeg, they've been rehearsing. I've been rehearsing on my own. I'll come back at a certain point ahead of the show, and we'll rehearse together. And I just couldn't even fathom what the future is beyond this show. I don't think any of us can really think about it. We just don't know if we. And there's been no bad blood or anything like that. It was more just, it felt like the stars, if they were aligned during the 3 albums, that they just became misaligned at some point, and it became incredibly difficult for me to participate, I think, being in a different city. And so it just felt like 3 albums was our statement at that point. And we didn't break up. We never issued any sort of news about that or anything like that. It was just put on hold. And whether this is the catalyst for bringing it off hold is anybody's guess at this point. I'm not being coy. I absolutely don't know.
That's only fair. It's like an emotional cocktail of excitement and nerves and name it.
I feel like Jim Carrey right now on Dumb and Dumber. Like, so you're saying there's a chance?
Well, there's always a chance. I mean, there's always a chance. But I mean, it's just I have no idea. It would be. I'm certainly open to it. You know, like I said, it's there's material there, and it would be my great privilege to be able to, you know, to think that all of us were on the same page in terms of releasing a 4th album, which I think would be the natural extension of this. You know, in terms of a tour or something like that, I don't think that would be anything that we'd really discuss, just because the logistics of it would be too tough to navigate. I think the most important thing to us would be to come back with another, you know, statement musically.
Can totally dig that.
Yeah.
Couple of last questions, just some fun ones, you know, just to kind of chill off the interview, I guess. Of course, playing in Winnipeg, what was your favorite venue? Like, if you had to pick one venue from Winnipeg that, you know, like the venue to play like the ultimate Jet Set Satellite show, where is it?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, my favorite show that we ever played, I mean, from a performance level point of view, but we got to play on Canada Day. We opened up for the Watchmen and Matthew Good Band. And there was I think 80,000 people there.
That was at the Forks.
We played like that Scotiabank Theater stage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have our regular technical crew with us, so I don't know if it was the best show sonically for us, but it was certainly the most mind-blowing. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack before we went out there. The entire stage backdrop was a Canadian flag, and people were losing their minds. And I believe someone in the band still has footage from the stage just panning across the audience.
Nice.
And it is astounding. It makes one weak in the knees. So that was probably my favorite gig ever. In terms of a venue, you know, this is going to sound cliche, but I'm not sure it really mattered. It was more just about sharing that moment with the people that were there. And I can't think of a venue. I can't single one out necessarily. I mean, it was always nice to play the bigger clubs, which, you know, like Silverado's at the time, or, you know, I'm not even totally familiar with what's active now in Winnipeg, to be honest with you, but
not a lot.
Not a lot.
No.
Not a lot.
No, and that's like part of the podcast with us is we're exploring new venues, new bands, and we want to know what's the top venue these days.
There's lots of great bands, and you know, like there's some venues out there, stuff like the Handsome Daughter and the Windsor and stuff like that, and a lot of people are still playing the Park. But in terms of like, you know, the Zoos and the Alberts and stuff like that, it just
Silverado's is gone.
The Spike is not really up for that anymore. Coyotes is gone. Not really. Yeah.
Basically anywhere you guys mainly played is probably gone.
Shannon's is still kicking around. And
Shannon.
the sound. Oh, yes.
Yeah, Shannon's is still there.
Yeah.
What is the wackiest story about another band from a tour? And you don't have to name the band. I just want to hear like a really bizarre story.
A bizarre story.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything that's totally bizarre. I mean, I've seen some rock star temper tantrums backstage, which were fairly petty.
That's good. Hit me up with one of those.
Yeah.
Dish the gossip there.
Yeah, just about things that were missing from the craft table or from their rider, like trivial things and temper tantrums thrown. But I can tell you one of the coolest things was playing with the Headstones at one of the, I think it was a New Year's show, but it was a show at the convention center.
Oh, I heard about the show.
We were in the van, like going to the convention center, and Hugh Dillon, the singer, was being interviewed on the radio, and as we drove up, he started singing "Best Way to Die." They had asked him about, like, do you know anything about the opening band? Anything, what do you think of these guys? And he started singing "Best Way to Die" during the interview, which for me, particularly their first album, was like a real influence on me, and I still think they kind of occupy a very unique space in Canadian music. Just because they are darker and punkier and kind of have a lot of attitude.
Oh yeah.
So that warmed the cockles of the heart, to say the least.
Yeah, I've seen the last 2 times they come here, and he still brings that attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after I moved to Toronto, I started working in the film industry, and I actually worked on a couple of seasons of Flashpoint. So
and he's one of the main characters.
Yeah, I got and now I work in advertising, and the bass player from the Headstones is actually a producer in radio, so I see him all the time. And it's funny, I've had my own run-ins with every member of the Headstones here on sort of different ways.
Nice.
It's very unusual.
That's really cool.
Toronto show, Jet Set opens for Headstones.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Could totally see that.
That actually wouldn't be a bad starting point. I never actually thought about that, but that's interesting.
Light bulb.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, Jet Set Satellite. I'm wearing a T-shirt right now, which was
I think every single Winnipeg band does a version of that.
Oh yeah, Comeback Kid has done it. I'm wearing the Jets logo, Jet Set Satellite T-shirt. The team is back, and I've been saying this since the day that they hit the ice, that Jet Set Satellite needs to do the opening song when they come on ice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did sort of try some. Firstly, let me say, I mean, like I said, I'm a lifetime Jets fan. That was the reason for doing the logo. I know it's been done before. I like to think we did it the best with our attention to detail.
Probably agree.
We also, having the name Jet in your name doesn't hurt. But I don't think I'd try that one these days. I have a feeling that would end in a cease and desist order. But we did record a version of Cool Your Jets called Fuel Your Jets, Baby Fuel Your Jets. But honestly, again, the not being situated in the same city and kind of having to kind of piecemeal it together might not have been our best effort. I know it did get spun at some of the games, but it wasn't embraced as fully as we may have, desired. So yeah, I think that door was open and maybe it's closed now.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe some people on this end, we can start saying, hey, because you can actually request songs on Twitter.
DC and I know some people that work inside that organization.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try.
And
right.
Well,
it's one of those things too, where they pointed out to us that, cooling your jets is like the reverse of what they want.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I like the Fuel Your Jets.
Fuel Your Jets is good.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Or maybe a new track.
Maybe.
Maybe something hard in. They come out to Du Hast by Rammstein right now.
Which is good, but I don't know.
But a home sense could...
it could get better.
Yeah. We actually, the last guy we interviewed plays bass on a track that they did for the Jets.
Yeah, they are open to local bands, which is really cool. I think they do at least once a year.
Yeah, what was the name of the group again?
Come on, Alex.
Put me on the spot.
Boy in the Sea?
Boy in the Sea?
Yeah,
I was
that's
gonna
what
say
it is.
Boys in the Sea, and that's
Boy in the Sea.
It's Boy in the Sea.
Cool. You guys have any questions?
I mean, that I just want to say, that, the Winnipeg Jets is an organization that, they just do, in my mind, everything right. So, and we're talking right now while the Jets game is on. I can't believe you scheduled this interview for that.
This was the only time we could get the studio.
But I mean, they do everything right. So their support of local bands doesn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Do you guys have any last questions?
Actually, I just forgot about one thing about going back to the fan thing.
Yeah.
This was actually one of my favorite fan things. I told you, I can't believe I forgot about it. Every Halloween, they used to do a haunt show, and everybody would dress up, and there would be prizes for dressing up, and they would play a show.
Oh my God, that sounds incredible.
Yeah. We used to, I think there was one at the Garrick, there was one at Canadian's Regent.
Bands still do that nowadays. The kind of punk scene here right now, they usually do like a Halloween show where they cover other bands, where they dress up and cover other bands.
Yeah.
That's really cool. We never took it to that level, but maybe we would have. I know it was. We did 3 Halloween haunt shows as well, so it was.
That's really cool.
Halloween's my birthday too, so that was always
didn't know that.
good.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Last thing here. Do you have any words of wisdom for the local scene and local artists today coming up?
Do it because you love it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age now, but he kind of has been asked a number of times about bands that were interested in signing to labels and how do you get a record deal and everything. And his advice was, just do it like no one's going to help you, and and eventually, like if you get kind of big enough, a label will step in, right? But do it because you do it how you imagine you'd like it to be done, and just go out there and do it. Don't do it like thinking that someone's going to swoop in and save the day. Those days are over, and we may have been the last the last sort of bastion of that. I think, which felt lucky, but at the same time feels like, I don't want to say a footnote in what we did, but it was just like we were on a label for 1 album and we put out 3, and I feel like our best material doesn't necessarily all end up on that first one. So, I think you just have to really stay true to what it is that you want out of the project and just go out there and get it.
Totally dig it.
I like it.
I have one last question. I always ask it of everybody that I ever interview. It is the most important and hardest question that I ever ask anybody. Are you prepared?
Yes, I'm prepared.
Is a hot dog a sandwich, and why or why not?
I mean, aren't there enough sandwiches out there that the hot dog can't just kind of, own its own space? I would say no. I think a hot dog's a hot dog. It's totally an entirely different thing.
Totally valid answer.
I still agree with that. Sandwiches between bread. Hot dog is in a bun.
Totally valid answer. I don't think that there's
my childhood gets stomped on right now.
I don't think it's a particularly right. I don't think any of the answers are particularly correct. I'm just interested in knowing what different people think about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really looking forward to the show in August, and I'm thinking we'll definitely have to track Trevor down when he's in town at this venue and chat some more. And but yeah, Trevor, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening and chatting with us, especially with the Jets game being on.
Yeah, we apologize for that.
No, thank you guys. Thanks for your interest and enthusiasm about the band and great questions. And like I said, it's just it's heartwarming to know that anything that we did together still, had a life of its own. That was always the intention, but not the expectation, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So really looking forward to the show, and we're gonna throw down. So
all right,
I hope everybody's ready. Yeah,
can't wait. Thank you so much, Trevor.
All right,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, take care.
Cheers.
Right. Okay, you too. Bye.